Hi there, this is Solitaire Ronin from Solitaire Ronin Films, and welcome to another random review. Today's random review is Richard Benjamin's 1982 film, My Favourite Year. This is, I know it's a broken record, but this is one of my favourite films of all time. I saw it years ago, but for years you couldn't get it on home entertainment. I actually had a Spanish DVD of it, but Warner Archives just released this Blu-ray fairly recently. This is a multi-region Blu-ray. It has a commentary by the director Richard Benjamin, which is quite interesting. And it's a really nice print of quite a fantastic film. Directed by Richard Benjamin, who obviously started off as an actor. He was in Westworld, Catch-22. He was later in Woody Allen's Deconstructing Harry. And he's still working today making TV movies and TV shows. But he kind of had a string of films in the early to mid-80s. With My Favourite Year, City Heat, The Money Pit, My Stepmother is an Alien, and Mermaids. So for me, this is by far his best film. It stars Peter O'Toole, and it's one of Peter O'Toole's finest performances. He'll obviously be remembered for Lawrence of Arabia. O'Toole for me is in the same company as Robert Shaw as far as actors who just weren't in enough great films for one reason or another. The story of this film is it's set in 1954 in the height of TV comedy, and there's a show called King Kaiser, who is obviously kind of based on Sid Caesar, because it was co-written by Mel Brooks, who worked for Sid Caesar's show. And it's about a young writer played by Mark-linn Baker, who essentially gets the job of looking after a fading movie star played by Peter O'Toole, who's doing TV essentially to pay back owed tax. And it's loosely based on Mel Brooks' own experiences, and the character that Peter O'Toole plays, Alan Swan, is roughly based on Errol Flynn when he was struggling with alcohol problems and paternity suits all over the place. The film does kind of look like a TV movie. The period detail's wonderful, but it's really Peter O'Toole's film, because it is about a fading movie star, which strangely enough that's what Peter O'Toole was in 1982, struggling with addictions. And there's moments in the film where you do feel he's not actually acting, and the film he's funny in it, he's dashing, he's magnetic, and he's also quite sad. And in the end it's actually quite moving, or I find it quite moving. The film starts with a voiceover by Mark-linn Baker, because originally at the end the final scene was him at Alan Swan's grave, and so the whole film was essentially a flashback, but that ending isn't actually in the film. And Richard Benjamin points out that one of the reasons Peter O'Toole did it was because the original script had that scene at the graveside, and randomly the writer had put in a birth date and a death date, and whether you believe it or not, bizarrely, the birth date was Peter O'Toole's birth date, and that's one of the reasons why he did it, because he believed in omens and signs. So whether you believe that or not, so that's why the film kind of opens with a voiceover that kind of then, that's the last time we hear a voiceover in the film until the end of the film. I would say you could argue, if you're being cynical, that you could side on it's a little bit sentimental, and certainly Mark-linn Baker's performance could have been toned down just a touch. Jessica Harper, who of course is in Suspiria and Phantom of the Paradise, she plays Mark-linn Baker's love interest, and to be perfectly honest, it's not very interesting, their relationship. This is really about, it's a film about Peter O'Toole and Peter O'Toole's character, and when his character's not on the screen, it's just not as good. Joseph Bologna, or Bologna even, gives a really good turn as King Kaiser, and there's a whole running subplot where he does a boss hijack sketch, which is based on this union leader played by Cameron Mitchell, very gruff performance by Cameron Mitchell, whose name is Boss Rojek, and he wants this stopped, and later on in the film, accidents happen on stage and he sends round heavies. The film just has some fantastic one-liners. It's really funny, but the reason that I love it so much, and the reason why you should watch it, is because it's got a heart to it as well, and it's Peter O'Toole's performance, because it is one of his greatest performances. There's a few really nice set pieces. There's fantastic running jokes. When Benjamin Stone, Mark-linn Baker's character, takes Alan Swan back to meet his mum in Brooklyn, and she's married to a Filipino bantamweight called Rocky Caroca, which is funny in itself. It's an absolute joy, and of course their uncle is there, and then his aunt turns up in her wedding dress, and of course all the neighbours end up coming out as well. It's just a really nice scene, and you could say the film is perhaps predictable, and like I said, it's perhaps sentimental to some people, but it's just a fantastic little film. The opening song is Stardust, and that kind of encapsulates the mood of the piece. It is kind of nostalgic, but you do really get a sense of that period in American culture where television comedy was king. Again, with the advent of television, the kind of movie star era was perhaps coming to a bit of an end. Obviously, in the cinema post-war, it was the beginnings of film noir. It was the beginnings of films being more gritty and downbeat, whereas television comedy was very kind of quick and upbeat and colourful, and this is just a perfect example of that. So I would highly recommend watching it. You might dislike it, but it's one of my favourite films, and it's one of those films that I think has been neglected, but fortunately, like I said, Warner has just released this on Blu-ray. A much needed Blu-ray release, and it is multi-region. And if you're a fan of Peter O'Toole, it's just an essential purchase, because again, he does physical comedy in it. He's got fantastic one-liners, but he also has moments of melancholy and moments where he really gets an emotional response from the audience. Or maybe it's just me, I don't know, might just be me. So please let me know in the comments below if you've seen My Favourite Year and what you think of it, and I would love to hear your comments, and hopefully we'll see you again for another random review. This is Solitude Ronin Films, saying thank you very much for watching, and have an excellent year.